So, hello, folks. My name is Leonard Matthews. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. And as you can see, I didn't show up with. There are some handouts for you to have. I didn't make a whole bunch because, relatively speaking, this is a situation where I'm going to talk through some things, and I welcome to be interrupted. I will give you a bit of more of a background, but I think at this point, I would first and foremost, because I can say a lot of things before I start talking about what we're going to get into today. I can say a lot of things about it, and what I would often do is before I spoke to people, in particular people of Euro ethnic background, people within this room already know that. I always kind of give them a heads up, like, you can't unlearn what I'm about to teach you. You can't unlearn it, and it's going to change, guaranteed, it's going to change the way you think. This is a 100% guarantee. It is not hyperbole. But before I do that, and I can say that no matter how where you are in life, but I can say that all I want. But what I want to do at this time, before I get started into the meat of this, I would like to offer an opportunity for a couple of testimonies for a couple of folks who've had time to digest this and who've experienced life at this point. So I think that their ability to talk about what it's done in their lives, I think, is powerful. Because the old saying that people don't change, yeah, this is going to change even the strongest if you let it change you. But it's going to be a choice. So if I may call on gentlemen first, call on Bob here and allow him to talk about what learning this stuff has done in his life. Hold on, does he need a mic? Hold on, Bob, because it's being videotaped, so they're gonna get you a mic. Come on down.
All right. Is it recording? Leonard and I go back a year or so. I'm giggling because we keep trying to get together to talk about this stuff, and so here we are today as a group. When Leonard first passed out his very voluminous and detailed outline, it kind of blew me away, because it was a completely fresh look at the whole idea of race and ethnicity, like nothing I'd seen. And what was so obvious was the scholarship that went into it, the homework that the man did, and his ability to articulate these ideas. And I said, Leonard, we got to have coffee sometime and talk about this stuff, and we've never really gotten around to it, but we will. We will. I am really, really pleased that several of you have put in some serious time to get this to happen today, because I hope it represents one piece of a fresh movement within Hillcrest Church in our broadest sense of social justice, and bringing information forward, because there's no greater challenge to ignorance than fresh information. And so I see that as why I'm here. And Leonard, I value your contribution, and I value our growing friendship, my man. Thank you,
sir. Back at you. Mr. Kubat.
This is not a passionate idea that Lenard is going to present today, although it may arouse our passion. It is a reasonable approach to identity based on history and culture. It gives me hope. Some might say, thinking of Martin Luther King, I'm reading him right now, thanks to your suggestion, Wayne. Oh, some might say it gives us faith that there can be peace through such reasonable thoughts about identity. It's affected me directly in that when I am asked, which happens just for doctor appointments, what is my racial background? I am starting to write other. I refuse to just put myself in the class of white. That is just too big of a category. So thank you, Lenard, for this new insight.
Thank you both for taking a second to speak. Let's get, because I've never been one for being someone who likes to beat around the bush, so I would like to get, if it's okay, get right into it. I'm going to give you a quick background about me so you can have a little bit of trust of who you're talking to, and that's important. And also, I acknowledge those who are at home, because this is also being live streamed. So, a quick background about me. I'm a high school teacher. To be specific, I teach basically physical education in San Ramon, California, at California High School. And I started on a master's. I started to work on a master's. And when I started to work on this master's, the initial master's work I was doing was asking African American and Black Americans if they identified as African American, Black American, something else, or something else, and why. The bigger question was, why did they choose what they chose? And I asked that question, just random. I was man on the street, talking to different, just random people, because I was working on my master's. And I spoke to people ranging from ages of freshmen in high school to 80, people in their late 80s, African Americans in their late 80s who were part of church I attend in Hayward, my home church in Palmacia in Hayward. And the thing that amazed me is when I was asking this question, especially people who were in their 80s and close to 90 years old, they had never been asked this question. To actually, Black and African American, they'd been there, but they had never been asked to explain why they chose what they chose. And it got them thinking. So the more I did these interviews and started to shape that, I started asking myself, okay, well, why exactly do white people call themselves white? Right? So I just started asking, and it was just some curiosity at first. And so I started digging into it. Where did it come from? Why? And some 5 years or so later, 5, 6, 7 years later, I've been doing this research about 5, 6, 7 years. At least since, 2018, I had finished my primary round as I had gone to our district officials and said, hey, I believe there's a different way we can approach how we handle ethnicity and our approach toward when things happen. Because if you're familiar with the San Ramon district, you're also familiar that they've had quite a few ethnically charged incidents in the last 7, 8 years. And few of which have made national news. And so as a teacher in that school district, I had to, here's an approach. And I was put with 2 other teachers who were Euro-ethnic themselves. And all 3 of us started to work on this plan that I'll be sharing some of it with you today as the first lesson in ethnic studies is going to be, if we get straight to it, learning to properly separate the white identity from European American identity. They are not the same identity. 7 years of research has shown me that no. And the understanding of this holds a very big key to the unity of all, because we have been divided on artificial lines. And so what I have proposed in the schools is that the Euro ethnicity be included in ethnic studies. Because ethnic studies in the state of California, 25-26, becomes a mandatory curriculum. So every student, if you have any grandchildren, great-grandchildren that are coming through school 25-26, they will have to take ethnic studies. It's mandatory. Okay, just like taking senior economics, which is a class I think we all had to take, senior economics and senior history or something, or senior English. You know, all of us in this room had to take mandatory classes to graduate from high school. Ethnic studies is going to be one of them. And one of the key elements, and this is why we're starting here again, is first and foremost separating Euro-ethnic identity and white identity. So I'm going to break this down into 3 parts and then leave plenty of time, hopefully, for question and answer, because that's where the meat of this is really going to be lying. So I will first talk about, I gave you my background. Next thing I'll tell you a little bit about is why it is important that we come to this understanding and how it helps us all to understand one another. And then last but not least, I'm going to take it even a step further and put a call to action out. This is not something that's just going to be for your headspace. No. You're going to be walking out. When you walk out of here, I will have given you an action that you can take, and actions that you can take to make a difference. Okay? And it's all within your control. So I've already gave you my background and how I got to this. So let's talk about why the importance of, and I'm just going to be just focused right now on this Euro-ethnic part of this class. Mainly because, honestly, it's the gorilla in the room. It really is. Let me start off by saying this. The first thing that moved me to start this part and to push this was one day I was in my PE class, and within my PE class, we always listen to music. And I had music going. This is some years ago. And I had some music going. And when I would have different songs by different artists, like, so if James Brown came on, I would, when I had the oldies music on any given day, James Brown would come on, or I would ask my African-American students and black students, all right, who is this? I know you heard it at the family barbecue. Come on now. Who is it? Oh, my God. Okay, it's James Brown. You need to know that. You need to know that. You need to know it. James Brown, Father Soul. And I would, like, when Santana would come on, I would grill my Latino students, my Latina students, like, who's this? Santana, And then even I started early with my Italian students, because when Frank Sinatra would come up, I'd be like, hey, who's this? And they wouldn't, I say, you don't know Frank when you hear it? You're Italian, for crying out loud. And so I would do that. So one day, a student looks at me. His name was Spalding. Last name was Spalding. Spalding looks at me, and he goes, what music do I have? I'm just white. That stuck with me, right? Because I wanted to say, no, there's more to it, and I was like, okay, can't necessarily give him white music. But that's what started me thinking. Kids like Spalding, and in the current day and age, the importance, let's talk about the first level of importance, and that is in education. In education right now, the big thing is what's known as DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The problem with it, as I see it, is that, and what we're doing differently, is that DEI does not give a kid like Spalding a voice. If you are Euro-ethnic, male, and you are not gay, you do not have a voice in DEI. The importance of separating white and Euro-ethnicity is that someone who holds white identity, and we'll go over that as we go, someone who holds white identity truly does not have, if they are true to their identity, they do not have the ability to empathize with any struggles that I or someone not white can go through. They have an inability because of their belief doesn't allow them to believe, doesn't allow them to connect. However, someone who's still connected, let's say a German American, someone who has German ancestry, and you find out that the German immigrants were the first to reject slavery in the 1600s, over 100 years before the Civil War. If Spalding was German American and he wanted to have a comment in DEI and he says, I come out of Germantown, why wouldn't I listen to him? Mary Dyer died in the 1500s. She was from England. She was not only a civil rights worker, but she also resisted for women's rights. She was the first kind of a suffragette to a certain extent, first women's libber. She was from England. Now, she was also killed for those beliefs. She was killed by Puritans. I can go on, or I can talk about the Irish who made up a ton of the Quakers, who also, when given the opportunity in the Pinkerton riots, broke fellow imprisoned African Americans out and fought side by side with them for several days. Because the same people who had put those Irish in those coal mines put those Africans in those coal mines. There's tons of stories like that, but we don't tell them. There's tons of stories where Europeans made up a lot of abolitionists and civil rights workers. They were Underground Railroad workers, and they risked their very lives in multiple ways to help. Their story has never been told, but here's what's unique about their story. Did you know that any act that holds equality for anyone not considered white, any act done by someone who could be considered white, a European, that says we are not better, we are not over? Were you aware that in that moment, that European person is rejecting white identity? Do you realize that when the French put chains at the feet of the Statue of Liberty to show that they have a disapproval of slavery? Slavery was a right granted to whites by God. French said, we don't believe in that. We're French, we're not white. The French don't believe that we were given permission by God to do any of this stuff that you, and it was Puritans, are claiming that you have the right to do, that we have the right to do. Thanks, but no thanks. That's not who we are. Mary Dyer said, no, thanks, but no thanks. That's not who we, the English, are. Were you aware that the Dutch established New Jersey, and the unique thing about New Jersey was that the Dutch, in their core belief, and there are people going to read that, oh, the Dutch were major slave traders. Some of them were, some of them weren't. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Everybody's hands was dirty in the slave trade. Everybody's, including Africans. Everybody's hands was dirty. So if you're going to point to those Dutch who did it, I can point to the Africans who participated in it. But then the same, I can point to the Africans who resisted. I can point to the Dutch, who also resisted. Right? I can call both. Now, when the Dutch did it, difference being, when the Dutch did it, they were rejecting white identity. Because again, I'm going to say it again, whites have permission. And I'm going to make this real crystal to you sooner or later. Whites had permission to own people. The Dutch, in their formal beliefs, and this is in the packet that you all will have. You can read it for yourself. The Dutch, and I put it in there, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but the Dutch formal belief of the Dutch was the equality of all men regardless of who they were, all men and women regardless of who they were. And so in New Jersey in the time, yes, the Dutch they would buy slaves, but they treated them, as the deal went, they treated them as indentured servants. They didn't break up their families. And after they were done and they had worked off the money that was used to buy them, they were set free or offered an opportunity to go into business with the Dutch. Matter of fact, it was John Punch. The Dutch were the first ones to get with Africans and start trying to rebel and run away, right? But these are stories not told about Dutch Americans. And on and on and on. These stories bring us together, which is why in ethnic studies, why it's important to study it and to allow the Euro ethnicity to be presented in this light as separate from white. Let me ask you all this. I'm a fan of the Socratic method. Anybody not know what the Socratic method is? Anybody not know? Show of hands. Okay. So the Socratic method is instead of, and I'll put it, since we're in a church, I even use, God used it, right? And I'll show you where. But the Socratic method is a method, instead of telling you something, I ask you a question that takes you to what I'm thinking, right? And so for you to answer the question, I know if you answer the question truthfully, you will know exactly what I am thinking. And that gives you an opportunity, before you answer the question, that gives you an opportunity to examine what you know. Okay, so this is called the Socratic method. And God used it. And because you ask a question knowing what the answer is already. And if you wonder where God used it, here's where it is, very beginning. Adam, where are you? That was the Socratic method. Adam was going to have to tell the truth, right? So, Socratically speaking, and I put it to all of you, the burning cross of the Ku Klux Klan, how many of you have seen that picture? Not in person, but just in pictures. Oh yeah, I hope you haven't seen it in person. I've never, thank God, have seen one in person. How many of you are aware that the burning cross of the Klan stood for the light of God, reminding all people that God had placed whites, the sons, the descendants, and which is funny because if you know Scripture, you're going to know that this is way off. That God had given the descendants of Japheth, that we were supposed to be everybody was supposed to be under Japheth, right? Both Shem and Ham are supposed to be under Japheth. That's their belief. Now, if you know Scripture, you know that's not how that worked. Japheth. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The three sons of Noah. And Noah, so if you don't know, and for those who may not have a religious background, the basic story goes, and this is again, so we're saying focus here, this is the burning cross of the Klan here. I'm going to explain what that is, and then I'm going to ask you all a question. The burning cross of the Klan, what they believed and what the Puritans believed, and because the Puritans are the ones who brought this belief to the United States. Okay, it didn't come in, by the way, with the initial, when they had the 1492, all that. There was some other things that were claimed in the name of Spain, but it wasn't in the name of white. The white came in with Puritans. But what the Puritans believe is the story in the Bible, for those who may not know, is that Noah had went to test and drink his wine, test his wine from his fields, and he fell over drunk and he passed out. When he passed out, and then his son Ham walked in and saw him uncovered. His robe was up and he was uncovered. He was naked from the waist down. Now, I don't know all the basic traditions and whatnot, but there was some kind of tradition. So he went and got his brothers, told his brothers what was happening, and he and his brothers went and grabbed a blanket and they walked in the tent backwards and covered Noah's nakedness. Noah wakes up, and the first thing he says is, "Cursed be Canaan." And the children, blessed is the God of Shem, which was, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Noah woke up and said, "Cursed is Canaan, blessed is the God of Shem, and they shall serve him." And Japheth will also find tents and shade underneath Shem, right? So, to make the long story short, is that Canaan, when Noah woke up and said, "Cursed be Canaan," Canaan was one of Ham's sons, just one of 4, okay? And so with that, the Puritans said that God had cursed all of Ham's people to be subservient to Shem. Now, those who are considered quote-unquote white are a mix of Japheth and Shem, right? So what the Puritans believe and what the Klan believed religiously, and is still being taught in some pulpits to this very day, is that we are cursed. Anybody not white, not of a direct son of Japheth, Shem, or the white descendants of Japheth and Shem, because you can't necessarily be an Asian, then if you were one of those people, then God put you in charge of everyone. That's what the Puritans believed. That's what gave them the right to own slaves, because they were white and God, through Noah, had put them in charge. They also believe a combination of that. They also believe that it's a mix of this is in the Quran, that black skin was the mark of Cain. Okay? So those who may know Scripture know the story of Cain and Abel. God gave Cain a mark, right? God did not identify that mark, but what the Puritans taught was that the mark of Cain was our black skin. Okay? So we were Cain. We were not only Cain, we were cursed to serve them because of our own actions. Biblically, they don't have, and then they even mixed up a piece of the Quran in there where the God in the Quran made a mention of those who follow God, well, their faces will shine like the afternoon, and those who don't follow God, face will be black as night. As you can tell, that has nothing to do with skin color. It's just light and darkness. But they took all of that and made a religious thing saying, burning cross, we are in charge of you. That is one form of white supremacy. A separate form of white supremacy is, how many of you know that you use race out of context? In other words, how many races are there?
Can you repeat that, please?
How many races are there in the world? Science, yeah. Basic science. God and science don't disagree. How many races are there?
Well, do they lump all Asians together?
Is Asian a race?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not. How many races are there? One. Humans. The human race. There's no other races. So when I ask you Socratically, how many of you use race out of context? How many of you have used the word race to describe people? Different ethnicities. How many of you have done that? Okay, how many of you knew that was and is from the language of Nazis. Different human races and qualifying and identifying people as colors, it all comes back to someone by the name of Carl von Linnaeus, System Naturae. I want to say it was in the 1734. It's in the packet that you have available to you. It's all there. And he categorized different races. Now, what I put in front of you today is this. If there are multiple races, then white is the superior race. If you do not believe, and I, being black, Homo africanus to be exact, according to eugenics, I am but a beast of the field, barely human. The only other group to share my title, according to eugenics, are the Irish. True story. Reason is the black Irish were supposedly touched by North Africans. That's why the Irish were treated so bad. Okay, so, want me to say that again?
No, I just wanted to say that we all came out of Africa. At least 3 million years ago.
Yeah.
And so, we, speaking of race, you can't, you said we all,
Oh, one race.
we're all black.
Yeah. And then our bodies changed based on our ecosystem, where we settled.
I don't see it as, I think we have to.
We're going to pass around the mic too a little bit too, so.
In our minds and behavior, we have to be careful even saying anything about race.
Well, what I'm trying to do here,
What you're doing.
that's what we're doing. And what's different about what this is as opposed to what DEI is DEI tends to tell you this is how you say a pronoun, this is how you say this, that. There's none of this here. Your call to action, when we get to the call to action, doesn't tell you what to say. I'm just going to raise your awareness. This is where that language comes from. You're free to do with this whatever you wish to do with it. My only objective is to make sure that you understand what you're saying. And that way, if you wish to change, you can change. This is all that, and that we're doing it in a sanctuary, even for those who are listening who may not be religiously connected. I think there is a certain irony that the thing about this, as we proceed forward, what you will quickly find, is just like it's a choice, right? Those of us who are of faith understand that God doesn't make us believe. We have to choose to believe. And what we go through with this about identity, as we start to break apart the white identity and Euro-ethnic American identity, it becomes ultimately a choice of whether or not you wish to break away from that identity or not. Or whether it's a choice of whether, but I'm not forcing you either way. I'm just making sure that we all understand, because one of the calls of action is to change the way we discuss things. It's a very simple thing to do, but I can tell you what to do, or I can get you to understand it and give you a choice. That's what I'm trying to do, is help just understand, give you a choice. You have a choice. And everybody around you understands this, so it's your choice of how to speak. It's always your choice. You have more?
Pardon?
No, you were holding the mic, so I was wondering if you had more.
No, not at this time.
Not at this time. Just set it right next to you. All right. But come back at me. I want this to be interactive, but talking to the mic because it's being videotaped, if y'all can. So now that language, people of color, how innocent is that? White people, black people. By the way, and so let me get this, and it was interesting because I had an interaction with someone, and this someone, we were talking, who was also asked to be, please make sure you mention me as black, because she felt I am not an African American, I'm black, and that's cool. So I want to make sure I'll just get this out of the way, because I'm pretty sure that there are going to be those, and it's okay if you are. saying, well, what about black and African American? You're saying there's a difference between white and European American, and we're unpacking that right now, but what about black and African American? Yes, there's a difference. The difference is a lot more subtle, though. Basically, and I think I can help you understand if I tell you that my identity ethnically is I identify I'm an African American raised in black culture. I chose African American because I also have indigenous roots, Blackfoot and Cherokee, Okie. And if we all hyphenate, they get to be the Native Americans as they should. They're the only ones that can wear the title of Native. That's why I believe strongly in hyphenating and identifying my ancestors. Truly, we did a lot of work, the majority of building of the infrastructure, okay, the formal infrastructure. However, the infrastructure was built by Native Americans, and they deserve to have that credit. The establishment of this place on the international trade scene, that was Native Americans. They deserve to have that hyphen. That is why I identify the way I do as an African American raised in black culture. So let me come back to full circle. Basically, when you get African American and black, it's real simple. Those of us, I would say the easiest figures you can kind of go on is say Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. I would say Malcolm X was an African American because Malcolm X often pointed to not only the things that we did here as a people in the United States, but he also pointed to the great things that the West Africans did, because those of us who are in the United States are actually of West Africa. We're not of the Egyptian. We're of the Kush line. We're of the descendants of the Kush. That Kush is the oldest son of Ham. Canaan was Cush's brother. So, or Cush's youngest brother was Canaan. Okay, so we're the descendants of Cush. So those of us who find the power in the descendants of Cush and the great things that they did, the Renaissance, spreading of the Renaissance, because it was out of Cush that the Renaissance went up through North Africa, then went up into Europe, etc. But that all came through Cush. So those of us who marry ourselves also to that part of our heritage, that's why I marry myself also to that part of my heritage, as well as the great things that were done here. So that's why I say I'm an African American, and to give that credit to the Native American for being the builders of the infrastructure and establishers of this nation, right? The true founding fathers, in my personal view. So, and then black, we were 7 nations of Africans that came here. Notice I didn't say tribes, 7 nations, okay? I would encourage all of you, if you've not seen The Woman King, even if you have seen it, watch it again, because I can legitimately, after doing the research, I can legitimately tell you down to the names that they use, that is the most factually accurate movie ever made about who the African Americans are. Woman King. It is the most factually accurate movie I've ever seen. Watch it. It's entertaining, but watch it for historical value. But nonetheless, the 7 kingdoms made up, and this is all part of ethnic studies. We'll get back to the European part, but I'm just trying to explain, as I'm breaking it apart, I'm just trying to make sure those who understand that, yeah, African American and black American have a nice break too. And again, so African Americans are ones for saying, yes, we did great things here. That's Malcolm. That would be, like I said, a Malcolm X who said we also did great things as Africans. A black American would be more like a Martin Luther King, who never really touched on things that we did great as Africans, but he always, of course, touched on the things that we did here as African Americans, as blacks, and black culture being created by the 7 kingdoms that were here. So there were 7 kingdoms that were here. We were all thrown into one area, and we had to make a community out of that. Now, I'll feel free to tell you, I did a thing not too long ago where we had a pretty rough game in PE. It was a very physical game. And I just for this fun of it, because it's an old Irish game, I put all my Irish students. Now, I'm in San Ramon, predominantly Euro-ethnic neighborhood. I put all my Irish kids on one side that knew they were Irish descent, and I put all the kids who knew they were English descent on the other side of this very physical game. I have been teaching that game for 20 years. I only did that once. There is There is an innate thing between the Irish and the English that has not died down, even here in the United States. It even comes out of kids who are second, third generation here. It inevitably erupted, and it was the most physical game, and I never did it again. But keep in mind, sometimes when you talk, especially when you talk about the things and the violence sometimes within the African American community, keep in mind that we also have kingdoms, just like England and Ireland, that did not get along. The kingdoms of the slave trade also had kingdoms that just did not get along, right? But we were forced into one culture. So that would be black culture, because we were called blacks, based on eugenics, back to that. So that is the difference. Those who just find the grace and the power in the things that are done by the black community, black Americans, Martin Luther King. Those of us who find the beauty in that, but also attach our African roots to it, Malcolm X, myself personally, we're African Americans. So there's a difference. European American and white American, I'm about to break it down real simple, and then we're going to start to give you a call of action, and then I'm going to open the floor. European American and white American, let me do the Socratic method. Now that you've gone through, let me ask you this, and this is where I challenge your minds. And challenge the minds of those at home. The burning cross, here's a quiz question. The burning cross of the Ku Klux Klan, was that a symbol that represented English people, French people, Irish people, German people, or white people? The burning cross, who did it represent? So it represented white people. That's what we're hearing? So right now, you just realize that you just simply said that white and European are different. You just said it. All I did was ask the question. You just acknowledged when you say that the burning cross did not represent Germans or English or French, but they represented white people. You acknowledge that white and European are not the same.
I don't look at it that way, but I hear where you're coming from.
Right. So it's, okay, let me say it this way. I'll help you with that. Does the burning cross reflect the beliefs of Germans, the beliefs of British? In other words, you would still see it today. If it's a belief of the country, of the nation, you would still see burning crosses as a part of British, English celebrations or French celebrations or German celebrations, but do you? No. But it was only a part of the Klan celebration. So do those beliefs of the Klan, are the beliefs of the Klan the same beliefs of the Germans or the French or most European or any Europeans? Do you follow me?
I'd go back to your...
Get the mic.
You're breaking down when you said we need to look at the fact that, oh, I'm sorry.
Mike's right next to you.
All right.
Right next to you. There you go.
Is it working?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'd go back to your idea that you brought out much earlier, that each of these national groups, German, Irish, French, whatever, the individuals didn't wholly believe that. They broke themselves out into racist and abolitionists, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I see it as a little more complex than the statement you made right off that said, oh, that means thus and so. It's just more complex than that.
Okay, that's fair.
But I will say that clearly reflected the Klan's core belief.
Right.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Did the Klan
and those who chose to go along with the Klan,
right,
whether willingly or coercively, yeah.
Right. Now the question is, does the Klan represent Europeans, does the Klan represent white people?
Some and some not.
But let me try this way. The swastika with the circle around it, okay, that often used by the Nazis, is that a symbol of the Swedish people, of the Norwegian people? Is it the symbol of the Italian people? Or is it it's a symbol of Buddhism, but I'm saying black with the circle, specifically used in that way. Is that for them, or is that for white people, or is that for Europeans?
I thought they defined it as the Aryan people, and they defined Aryan in the way they wanted to.
Exactly.
And it was pretty much pasty white and blonde and blue eyes and that sort of thing, yeah.
Right, but it's not attached to one country. No. So the beliefs of white and the beliefs of Europeans, are they different or the same? Different. So they always want to say it's complex, but is it really that complex? Let me help you all out. Let me give you this one. This one makes it really easy, I think. How many of you have ever heard of the melting pot? This is all in the handout I gave you. How many of you have ever heard of the melting pot? Okay. Now, how many of you, back to Socratic method, how many of you know that every reference in popular media to the melting pot back then, there were 4 references. All of them are in the packet that I gave you. Not one of them referenced a non-European nation. And so what the melting pot was, and this goes to your point, what the melting pot in Europe was presented to as Europe is where Europeans go. You get into the melting pot and you leave behind your European ancestry. You leave it behind because when you come out of that melting pot, you are the superior white person in the United States. You're a part of the ruling class. And now that you're a superior white person, you are superior because God says you are superior. And that was in churches. And science says you are superior. That was in school books. So another easy way of saying it is that some European immigrants went into that melting pot and you see what they got out of it. They went from serfs to ruling class. Right? So they went in. Yet, some said, no thanks. I don't mind being German. I like being German. I like being English. I like being French. I like being Portuguese. I like being Spanish. I like being, no thanks. We'll go around the melting pot. And those who went around the melting pot when they got to the other end were generally 99% of the times Underground Railroad workers, civil rights workers, and abolitionists. Because they didn't want white representing their nation, their nation's beliefs. Because white beliefs did not reflect their national beliefs unless they went into that melting pot. But those of you who may go in this point forward and start to claim your Euro ethnicity, always just taking a second to recognize those who then try to claim your same Euro ethnicity, but then say something obviously bigoted that's not part. You should feel free to be like, if you are a Scot and that person claims to be a Scot, and then they make a comment which agrees with the white identity stuff of superiority, you very much should be in the right of being able to say, no, you gave up being a Scot. You're not Scot. I'm a Scot, and we Scots don't believe that. So you're white. Go ahead and be white, but don't claim Scottish and then go say that crap, because that's not who we are. But kids can't do that today, and that's something I want to be able, kids to be your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids to be able to do, because that brings them in line with us, and that takes us to the next part before I open it up. Call to action. Now, we're going to discuss this more, obviously, because I can see there's questions, okay? And I'm here to answer every single one of them. Call to actions. Here's some things you actually can do. One, you will notice one of the attachments And I'll set it up so all of you can get an email. I can email you all the attachments. All you got to do is put your email address in there, and I'll hit send, and you'll have it before you leave. One call to action. There's one small one, and that you can do in your personal lives that starts to tell the truth. And then there's one big one, the small one. You'll see it it's called teacher training or challenging colorism. My students already do this. They chose it themselves. I explained to them the power of having an ethnic roundtable where every single ethnic group is represented. So, because what happened was in my class, one of my classes, we had two kids start throwing racial epithets at each other, right? They got into initial argument, and then it turned into back and forth. And so it's a student-run class. And so the students who were in charge of the class, they were like, we're not sure what to do. And they had all these guidelines that they have from the school, which, like, again, it's like the DEI I keep talking about. And again, DEI, the kid, I'm looking at all my, in particular, Euro-ethnic males who would not be able to speak because of DEI. They wouldn't be able, their words wouldn't be respected because they were males, but they're not gay. If they were gay, then their words would be respected, right? But because they are not gay and they're Euro-ethnic males in DEI, they don't have a voice. And so the way I gave them a voice was said, okay, all my students have access to the other thing that you all have, and that is guidelines to teaching ethnic studies. And you will notice, if those of you who take it, I'll send it with you, but you also have a few, I think you printed a couple, right, Katie? Yeah, there's only two. There's two floating around. And you'll notice that everyone is treated equally. Every ethnic group is treated equally, and those ethnic groups are written by people who are Asian. It was written by Black African Americans. It was written by Asians, by Latino, by Jewish, etc., right? And so everybody gets treated equally, and so all of our students have that. And what I explained to them is our Euro-ethnic males, they also have a seat at the table as long as they've gone through this process of looking and separating and understanding that, yes, you can have if you come from a white perspective and you don't realize it, then when you come to the table, you come as the ruling class, and whether instinctively or uninstinctively, you're going to protect that ruling class. Even if you're there meaning with good meaning, if you haven't learned to separate the ruling class from your identity, you will protect the ruling class in lots of different ways. One thing I can point out here's two easy examples to see how quickly you can get caught up in. I took women's history, which was a lot of fun back in college, so I happened to know who this person was. The women's movement, let's take a look at the women's movement first, how this can happen. The women's movement. How many of you have heard of Elizabeth Cady Stanton? Okay, excellent. What about Susan B. Anthony? Bingo. Out of curiosity, have any of you heard of one of their other big cohorts? Now, this is where the women's history kicks in, Alice Paul. Okay, so Alice Paul was up there with them, right? When they had their biggest rally, suffragette rally, Alice Paul, of course, was there and ready to march. But Alice Paul told all the black women and African-American women to go to the back of the march. Okay, all right?
All are equal, some are just more equal than others.
And that is where I say that this is one of the places where DEI starts having a problem because they don't deal with that aspect. Yes, there are people within those communities who still haven't dealt. That's why I'm saying you can't just walk into, if we truly want to reach equality, Alice Paul presents a problem because she's there for the equality of women, but that's the only thing she cares about. You can't be apathetic. Now, if you want the help of others to help women, right? If you want the help of the African American community also to relate to you, if you want the help of the Latino, all of us who experience these things, then that community needs to get rid of their Alice Pauls. They can't be a part of it. The LGBTQ plus community, there's an issue there too, and that issue there is I call them anti-stripers. So an anti-striper in 2018, there was a push to add a black and brown stripes to the gay flag, which was met with protest, right? Not wanting to change the flag. That in itself is an anti-striper. So what you're saying is you're there and you want the flag there, and that's fine, but you are indifferent. You're there for the gay rights struggle, but you're indifferent to the struggles of different ethnic groups. So that's fine if you're going to be indifferent, but stop asking for our help. You can't have it both ways. So the LGBTQ plus community also needs to get rid of their anti-stripers if they're going to be in equity. But that's how quickly it can slip in. So that's why I say everyone needs to go through and face this dividing of the two. You need to face that. Whether you're gay, whether you're a woman, it don't make a difference, because what messes everything up are the Alice Pauls and the anti-stripers. Okay? So the call to action. Call to action 1. Start to do what Katie has done. Start to refuse to fill out. If you don't see yourself, and I say majority because there's only 2 of us who are not, definitely 100% not going to be considered white, right? And don't do it because you're just doing it to be, politically correct. No, that's not the point. If you don't check white, do it because that's not who you are. You know both histories. And honestly, the whole thing that we have is called Project Choice, because you choose your history. There's 2 histories of people who look like you. There's a history that's been told, and it's not very pretty. But then again, there's a history that hasn't been told, which is going to take me to call of action number 2, that is a hell of a lot more pretty and a hell of a lot more unifying and a hell of a lot more freeing. That's just in my opinion, okay? So the first thing you can do is, if you don't feel white, do what Katie starts doing. Start marking other. Start asking, why do I have to mark this box? This is not who I am. This is not who our ancestors were. And you can even just simply say, we went around the melting pot. We didn't go into it. So you told me the stories of all the people who went in the melting pot, but you're not telling the stories of the Europeans who went around it. But takes the second call of action. So that's a little thing. Also, a little thing you can do in that first call of action is to start asking your friends and your colleagues, do you prefer white or something else? And all you're doing is raising their conscience level. And if they say, oh, just white, well, just so you know, when you say white, here's what you're attaching yourself to. This is why I don't say it anymore. I've had many people who don't call themselves, a lot of people that I've worked with do not call themselves white anymore after this. They've stopped. They thought about it. Then again, I'll be honest with you, I've also had colleagues that heard it and hasn't talked to me since. Yes, ma'am. Caucasian, okay, and I'll address that. Let me get the call of action, and then hold that. We're going to come back to that, and I want everybody here to ask a question like that. Caucasian, that's a great question. I'm sure there's other questions. Let me do the call to action, then I'm going to turn it over for you folks. And if you want to take a break to take a breath or something, I'm good to go. But I'm a teacher. I'm used to teaching 90 minutes at a time. So, so it's easy for me. I'm sorry, I thought you had a question. Okay, so the second call of action is we need parent groups. The schools are going to open up ethnic studies coming up without the voice of the Euro-ethnic. There are laws that actually say the Euro-ethnic needs to be represented, and I've presented that law in the packet which you can sign up for. I need you down at board meetings. I need you at the school board saying, those of us who went around, because they're going to keep saying, you got history, you got white history, and you can just keep saying, you got the history of those who went into the melting pot. We want the history of those of us who went around. And matter of fact, here's the law that says you need to present that. And if they claim they don't got it, come get it from me. I got it. I just gave you an easy outline. Right? And so those are your two calls of actions. Start to claim your identity if you truly believe it. Don't do it if you don't believe it. Seriously, don't do it. If you don't believe in it, don't do it. If you truly believe in it, start presenting your proper ethnic identity. And when people question you on it, let them know logically, this is why I chose why I chose. Okay, I had a choice of white or European American or white or, and I'm just saying that because that's the majority of those in here, 95%. Okay, here's why I chose what I chose, and be ready to stand on that. And also be ready to start being more careful about people of color or white, and just recognize that you're using Nazi language. And try to and I'm not telling you what to say, just find another way of saying it. I ain't got to just think, it's not real. We don't have different races, different cultures. Or do you go by white or do you go by European? Or, just start asking, do you go by black or African American? Right? That's no harm. That's one plan of action. Second plan of action, getting down to those school board meetings in different counties all across at least across California, and starting to demand, we want Euro ethnicity. The story of those who went around the melting pot, the story of the abolitionists, the story of the civil rights workers, the story of the Underground Railroad workers. We want them, and all you got to do is say, this person was an Underground Railroad worker. They hailed from this nation, Denmark, France, whatever, because those are European Americans. That's their history. So that's the first part. I want to open up the floor, and I know you folks got to go.
I apologize.
No.
This is really fascinating. I love it.
No, you got to go. It's okay. It's Saturday.
Have to be, but thank you. It's really-
Just say whatever you.
Thank you. Okay, and I have a couple of housekeeping things. There are 40 sandwiches in Fellowship Hall for all of us to eat and greet and talk with each other after this is over. So I'll save some for you tomorrow. Okay.
Take a couple sandwiches with you.
Sorry.
We have an appointment at 1 o'clock in Napa.
Well, thank you
No
for
worries,
for
no
being
worries.
here.
Thank you. I thank you for coming. But we are 1 hour in. Does anyone need a couple minute break or
I just
anything?
want to
I'm good.
also say
Yeah.
that I want to be sure that people understand that the handouts, there's the big one that we all have, but there are other really compelling, interesting handouts, and those are available if you come here and put your email address on Lenard's laptop. He will make a group of us and email these other things. So this was a new idea to me. I share it with you.
Are those different from the ones you already?
They're all updated. So some of them you have, some of them you don't. Some of them you don't, but they're all updated now. I've added things, I've come across more things. This is a growing thing. Oh, I do have 1/3 call of action for those interested. Let's finish.
Okay, well, I have a call of action too, but you should go ahead. Okay. There is a really interesting event that's going to happen next Saturday, so a week from today. And this is put on by, it's called a Unity Walk, and it's put on by United Against Hate Week. United Against Hate Week. Pleasant Hill is having a United Against Hate Week this coming week, and it ends on Saturday at 10 o'clock at City Hall for a march around the community. And we envision Hillcrest t-shirts being worn by people going on this walk. I think it's really important that we participate in this. So there'll be more of that in News of Community tomorrow at church. So that's all
All right, yes. Yeah.
I was raised to be an American, not a white American, but an American. And I do remember very strongly your dialogue here about hyphenated, you know. I wasn't a European American. I was, or, you know, Swiss, German, English, you know, Scandinavian, etc. No, I was an American. And the melting pot didn't represent, you know, ethnicities. It represented that we all came from countries and different backgrounds, and we became Americans, not white Americans, not black Americans, not Italian, blah, 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 German, whatever. We all became Americans. And that was how I was raised.
Let me answer that Socratically. And so keep in mind, when I say Socratically, I don't want you to think that I'm grilling you. It's just the way, again, it's just my way of discussing things.
Sure.
Just so you can know. And so I ask you this, I'll ask you what makes us both, you and I. And there's two parts to that, because I also want to address the melting pot. What makes you and I both American? What do we agree on? Because I'm an American too. What do we agree on core? As Americans, what do we both core agree on? Now, I'm going to take one thing out. Freedom is not a core belief, because those who wrote freedom as an American thing were people who owned people. So you would be, I don't use freedom because you would then be asking me to respect the words of people who, in the face of Quakers and United Church of Christ members, because their abolition in this church goes back to at minimum the 1800s, telling them that they were wrong. So what then unites you and I as an American? Because freedom isn't going to be a common thing, because those are written by words that I don't necessarily respect. Those, it was hypocritical words.
Well, I would say democracy. So democracy was our foundation, and you know, equal voice brought to the table. Now, did it happen? No, I agree with you. It didn't happen. It just like freedom of religion was our basis, but did it happen?
Right.
No. So you know, implementation is one question that really, you know, we've had this very muddy past, but the idealism of democracy was absolutely the foundation, and freedom of religion. I mean, that's how we got where we are, right?
Right. Now, keep in mind, in 1790, you could only be democratized, and this is the time now, you got to keep in mind the melting pot. I want to address that. The melting pot, every reference, and it's in the attachment, you can read it, every reference to the melting pot, you're right that it was a lot of different nations, but you will notice that not one of those nations is not European. It was literally the place where you became white. It is where you stopped being European and you became white, superior white ruling class. Let me ask you this. What was the justification for giving white people the best of segregation? What was the justification? What was, why did they tell us, well, they get the best of this because, can anybody answer that because? What did they tell us? What about Asians?
Yeah.
I don't know how many Asians there were in the 1790s, so I can't really
Plenty.
say. But when Asians did come to this country to be workers on the railroads and such like that, they too were treated like less than human. And finally, when there were too many, they just decided they'd all be excluded.
Well, let's take it from the beginning. In the packet that you gave me, you will see what's called I think it's a Jinghe map. The Jinghe map was created, I want to say, in the mid 1400s. So when you say Asians came here, actually Asians were already here. They had been in trading relationships with the indigenous peoples for hundreds of years before Europeans arrived. So and Africans also had a trade relationship on and the Asian relationship was on the West Coast, and they traded in ivory. Africans traded on the West Coast with the natives here in gold and salt. That's in the document. Everything is there. So they were already here. Now, as far as hopefully I've addressed what it is, the melting pot, the true melting pot. I know what you were told, but you got to keep in mind that you grew up in a particular community in which that's what they wanted. That was the belief that they wanted you to have. But the truth be told, factually, no. The melting pot was where Europeans came to become white and gave up being European. And also hyphenating, just so you know, both Teddy Roosevelt in the package, both Teddy Roosevelt, who I actually love as a president, and Woodrow Wilson went out of their way to tell people not to hyphenate.
Well, because they wanted people to identify with democracy and with being American over their ethnic background.
Right. Now, being an American, you had to be white. You do realize that, right? Well, because 1790 Naturalization Act, you had to be white to be a citizen. If you were not white, you could not become a citizen. That was true well into the 1920s, because in 1926 was, I think, the final case of the Armenians. Armenians won white identity in 1926, and the reason they were striving for it is because they could not be citizens. Like the indigenous peoples weren't given citizenship until 1954, and Asians were given citizenship in 1958. Indigenous and Latino were given some, I want to say, in the 1920s. And so it wasn't, you had to be, well, I'm saying no, but you had to, when you keep saying American, all I'm trying to do is just raise your awareness that when you keep saying that, it's white American. They left it off. But you just look at the laws. If you weren't white, you could not be a citizen, which is why everybody fought so hard to get white identity. The only other person that could be a citizen was African and black. We could be citizens. We got it. Whites got it. Whoever was considered white, because the Finnish, if you're of Finnish descent, your whiteness was actually challenged. I see you, Bob. Your whiteness was actually challenged. If you're of Finnish descent, you actually had to defend your whiteness in court, as well as Armenian descent had to actually defend their whiteness in court, right? To prove, no, we are white, right? So, because that was the only way to achieve citizenship. So keep in mind, I'm not saying nothing, everything you're saying you do understand is right. I'm telling you that. But the reality is it was
right,
white.
Exactly.
It had to be white, because you couldn't even be a citizen unless you were white. The court determined you were white. And by the way, just so you know, the court's definition of white was if you were accepted as white as other white people accept you as white. I am not lying. It is in your package. You are white if you are considered white by those who are white. That was the Supreme Court's decision on who's white and who's not. So you're right, but it was, keep that law in mind, and that is why we hyphenate. They did not want hyphenation. I'm fairly certain, I can only speculate, but if you hyphenate, then, like I said, who becomes the only Native American? And if you can say white American, but what happens when not everybody identifies as white? And after today, not everybody will. Again, Socratic method, not grilling you. You understand that. Yeah. Just Socratic method, so you can understand what I'm thinking.
No, I agree with you that the laws don't support it.
Right.
Didn't for many years.
Keep this going, yeah. And keep thinking of more. Keep it going, folks. Keep it going. Think of questions. Grill me, please. You've been way too quiet back there. I know you got something to ask. You're an intellect. I've had enough conversation with you. I'll get Bob first, but I'm looking at you. I'm waiting. I'm looking right at him. There you go.
Before we had that little mini break, you were going to give us the third action step, and we didn't get to that.
Okay, so the first action step, start to talk about when you get an opportunity, talk about, if you so choose and you feel it, first action step, start to identify yourself different. Start to beat back structural racism by not supporting the language. Start to question at work why, if you have obviously some of you are not working anymore, but but in different places in society, start asking, hey, can we get a different, can we get a different box here, right? Start asking people to make changes. And now you have the logic as to why to do it. Little things, so you can start making changes there. That's one step. Change the way you talk, right? I gave you guidelines. Start thinking before you just blurt out person of color. People of color, don't blurt it out. Just recognize that you're using Nazi language, right? So find it, and I'm not telling you what to say, find another way of saying it. Just pause, think, okay, white, black, people of color, all of that classifying as colors, that's all Nazi. That's all Karl von Linnaeus, okay? And so that's one. So change the way you talk and the way you interact, okay? Then that slowly starts to spread the word. Second thing I told you to do, and this is the bigger one, is, again, get down to the board. We have an ethnic studies curriculum that becomes mandatory 25-26. There should be a Euro-ethnic portion of that, and there is a law, and it is in the packet, which I leave for you. It is in the packet. There is a law that says Euro-ethnics need to be represented in education. And I need people all over the state. Spread the word. I need people all over the state ready to stand. And your argument is going to be, we already talk about, and then the other ones, and he'll love this one as a teacher. We already have AP Euro history. Different thing, completely different thing. AP Euro history does not talk about abolitionists. It does not talk about Underground Railroad workers. It doesn't talk about civil rights workers. Those are European Americans, right? Anybody who did anything that defied white supremacy, that they declared themselves Europeans, okay? The last and the third and the final call to action. This is the hardest one. Don't back down. Don't back down. Folks, I can only imagine when you start, if you truly believe in what you've just learned, and you start to push back, you start to ask questions, you start to say, I want another box. Katie starts to say, can you get an Irish box here, please? Right? Can we get at least, give me a Celtic at least, throw me some Celtic action here, right? For me and some of the Scots, we can all jump on that one, right? You're going to hear some things, I'm sure, from people that you feel that you know that are going to be exceptionally disappointing. Because Socratically asking, if you choose to go with that identity, your Euro-ethnic identity, and relate to the struggles that your different Euro-ethnicities have gone through, and some of them, when you say struggle, sometimes it's simple as how many of you, in your family lineage, had ancestors that either told one of your ancestors to stop speaking another European language, or they changed their names to sound differently. FYI, that's because if you look at 1924 in this packet, Eastern and Southern Europeans were not considered, they were considered white, but you were considered not that bright. Not that bright. You weren't, so those of you sitting here that are Italian, Spanish, Greek, okay, you were considered to be poisonous to the white bloodlines. Also, if you're Russian, Polish, anywhere Eastern Europe, you're poisonous to white bloodlines. 1924, they excluded a lot of your relatives from coming here because you were poisonous. So, I see you, Bob. Stand strong, because especially if you're Southern or Eastern European, you have an additional reason to stand strong, because you can say, who the hell you calling other? Who you calling less than? No, I'm not going to go with your ID, because that ID calls me less than because I'm Polish. No thanks, I'll pass, right? Or I'm Russian. So stand strong is the third one. Don't back off. Don't let them change your mind. And you may be called a sellout, because at the end of the day, the sad part is there's going to be a lot of people who you think may not be aware of these things that actually are. And their basic attitude is, look, I know we have an advantage in language and everything like that. And ultimately, if it gets me one more dime than the person next to me, I'll go with it. You got to be ready for that, because there are people, the anti-stripers, the Alice Pauls, you gonna come in. Gerrymandering is actually, just so you know, that is every 10 years, I'm gonna make it real simple. What you actually want to know what it really is every 10 years they say I'm gonna say it in very street terms. Every 10 years they say, where the white people at? Democrats and Republicans draw districts favoring those communities. Those communities are the only tables that actually have a say. So the easiest way to put it is the real structural problem we have is both parties cater to Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker don't want anything that I want. And the rich guy is telling Archie Bunker, as long as you vote for me, I'll make sure you have a nicer neighborhood. Even though you're Archie Bunker, you'll never live in my neighborhood. But as long as you keep voting my interest, I'll keep George Jefferson out of your neighborhood. And for Archie Bunker, that's good enough for him. But it's going to hold a lot of your kids. Archie Bunker's going to hold a lot of your kids back, because the same rich guy isn't going to let your kids go forward. Right? Because he's just stringing Archie along for his vote, or whatever the case be. But that is structural, just so you know. And the way around that, by the way, is drawing districts on latitude and longitude. You draw districts on latitude and longitude, that goes away. And that's part of also why it's important to study this ethnic studies in this way, of everybody equal. Because inevitably it comes a point where you're going to have to ask people like you, hey, listen, both parties cater to your kitchen table. And if you don't want rich people in charge, you're going to have to set that behind, and you're going to have people that look like you who ain't going to want to set it behind. So you got to be prepared for that. And that's why I say stand strong. I can't begin to know what it's going to be like for y'all. I can't begin to know it. Because when you do this, like I said, some people going to turn on you. And some people you ain't expecting to turn on you going to turn on you. Because, like I said, their attitude is, if I'm getting an extra 10 cents, I don't give a crap about anybody else. I get my extra 10 cents, I'm good. Now, that extra 10 cents right now is costing your grandkids and your kids a lot of their future, because Archie Bunker is holding them back. Because Archie Bunker has his extra dime, that's good enough for him. He is holding your kids and your grandkids back. Because as long as a rich guy can manipulate him, we're done. And there's your structure. So you know. So gerrymandering, you were 100% spot on. You got a question?
Well, I just thought that gerrymandering, too, was a way to limit representation of black voters, because they draw the districts so that...
Would you repeat this in the microphone?
So all of the black voters are in one district when they could be in multiple districts, and potentially have a vote to have more representation, to participate.
It's not that they draw the districts to fundamentally You can look at it that way, because there's a people, you're
Well,
more than
in
welcome to
some
look at it that way.
places, that's what they've done, is they've tried to,
You're right. I'm agreeing with you. I am 100% agreeing with you. Only thing I'm saying is the way I approach it differently is I simply say, well, I don't say they draw it to disenfranchise us. I say they draw them to give more power to one household. That's different than saying I'm a victim. They're doing it just to attack me. No, they're doing it to favor you. Exactly. It just so happens that when they favor you, they favor Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker takes his time to step on us. You see how that works? So it's just a different mentality. Let me share one quick thing with y'all. This was really lit somebody up. I was in not a debate, but a discussion with a bunch of other teachers, and I brought up the fact that the only two people ever chattel slaved in the United States were Africans and Irish. A lot of people don't know some Irish were actually chatteled here, taken from their home against their will, and brought here and forced to work. Huh?
Indigenous people.
What about them?
Were also slaves.
They were also slaves, but they were fortunately for them, they were in their own land. They were able to get away. They knew how to run. But nonetheless, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Totally lost. So I was answering your question about gerrymandering. Okay. So, yeah. So I was going to say I was in this discussion with teachers, and what happened was, this was interesting. I brought up the fact that the Irish were chatteled. They were the only other group that were chatteled. And one of the teachers, who was white identity, I'll just say white identity, and she immediately jumps in and says, you shouldn't be telling me, I shouldn't be comparing the experience of the Irish being chatteled to the chattel slavery of African Americans, to which I responded. She's like, well, because what she said was, oh, it's so much greater for African Americans. But see, I've studied Euro ethnicity for this class. And so what I just simply said, you know what, you're right. There's no comparison to the scale. However, you are focused on what makes us different, and I'm focused on what makes us alike. That's the difference. It's subtle, but that's the difference. That is why, and that takes us full circle, why the studying of Euro ethnicity as separate from white is important. Again, right there, that's why it is important. So we can learn to start thinking in those terms. Looks like somebody else had a question. Oh, yep.
I didn't ask for that.
That you've been invited to say something. You want to say something? No? Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Katie. Okay, so I did want to give you folks one exercise that my class was going to do that'll help you exercise this. And you can bring this if you're going to have any kind of thing where you're going to start helping people with ethnicity and you want to do this little fun activity. It's a simple one because it gets you to actually have to choose. And that is, in a room, if you have a group of people in a room, have everyone go and learn a greeting from at least one other person in the room, right? So when I do this in my class, everybody has to give a native greeting to the people from their native ancestry, right? So when they come up to kids who are Euro-ethnic, they have a choice. They can just say hello, or they can have taken the time to dig into whatever their Euro-ethnic roots is and found a greeting. And then they can talk about not only the greeting, that gives them an opportunity to talk about what they know about their own ethnic group. And all it is just everybody go around, learn how to say hello from one person. Then those of you, and especially in this room, you have a choice. You can, like I said, you can be standard high, right? But now that's English, but you could, let's say if you know you have English roots and you're ready to call yourself a European or a English American, you might want to say, smashing day or stiff upper lip or whatever the British say. I know if somebody's in here is English, I'm sorry. You can totally kick me in the shins because I know that was absolutely awful. I know with my Irish students, I often say top of the morning. And I actually had one of my Irish students respond to me, taught me the response. Caught me completely out. A girl named, her name is Irish Vaughn. And I would say, top of the morning, Miss Vaughn. And one day she just pivots and turns and says in her little Gaelic accent, she wasn't even Irish, but she just really loved her Irish culture. And she just turns to me and goes, and the rest of the day to you, Mr. Matthews. And I learned it. And I didn't know, I learned that from my students, but I would always say top of the morning, and the rest of the day to you, Mr. Matthews. And she said it in and she pulled out an little Irish brogue and pulled it off. And so that is one little exercise that you can do, right? And that gives you the motivation, if you so choose, to go and look. And the last thing, Bob, is I challenge everyone in this room. I challenge everyone in this room there's two categories that you're going to see, white and European American. I challenge everyone in this room for the next session to fill it out. You can fill one out, you can fill the other out, you can fill them both out. Fill it out, and then we can come back. And when you're filling it out, what you're saying is, and I'm just going to pick Katie because I know her background. Or who was at she told me she was German. So what Katie wants to be thinking about is she's being Irish, okay? Or let's pick someone else. I've been keep picking on Katie. Who's someone besides Irish? Who knows what it? Mostly Irish. I'll say anybody besides Irish. But if we go to Irish, we go to Irish. German Swiss. Okay. Double whammy there because the Germans are different because they were accepted as white, but German towns, a lot of the German immigrants told them to take a long walk off a short pier. Like, what's this white crap? No thanks. Right? We're Germans, and if you know Germans, they're very proud people. And so what ends up happening is she wants to say, when I fill this out, kids who claim to be German Americans, what do I want other kids to know about German Americans besides the obvious, which I already gave you, Germantown, and the fact that how many of them were Quakers? There's a lot of them. A lot of German Quakers. What do I want German kids to know about German Americans, and what do I want German American kids to know about themselves? You go all the way through those outlines, and you do it for the Irish. You can do it for the Irish kids, but you keep those things in mind. What do you want people to know about the Irish? And what do you want, also importantly, do you want Irish kids who will, hopefully after this, start to proudly claim their ancestry? That's another big thing here for me, is giving them the ability to say, I am, and I am proud. They can't do that with white right now. But you know what? You can do it with Irish. You can do it with Swiss. You can do it with Swiss. Swiss and I'm proud. Nothing wrong with being Swiss. Dutch? Oh, hell, the Dutch. The first ones to we first people, thank you, brother. I'm going to thank you personally on behalf of my ancestors. Y'all, the Dutch were the first ones to help us start to establish some wealth because the Dutch treated us as indentured servants and not as slaves. So thank you on behalf to your ancestors. I think, 400 years later, I'm still saying thank you.
My grandmother was brought over by a Dutch family, and she had to work so many years to pay for the trip over.
Yeah, indentured servitude.
Yeah, so she was, I guess, indentured.
Indentured servitude.
Yeah.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming.
I'm done.
No, you're good. So indentured servitude, and the thing was, Europeans got treated like that. The difference with the Dutch, your ancestors, is that they treated us like that when nobody else did. They treated Africans like that, and they didn't have to. And they did it anyway, because that was Dutch belief. They did it for the indigenous people, too, yes. Yes. Oh, by the way, when the Germans established their camp, they didn't take any land from nobody. That was agreed to. Natives said, we're no longer using that land, and we have a different trade path now. Y'all can have that land. The Germans didn't take it by force. They took it by They took it by just simple negotiation and peaceful resistance.
Hi, you mentioned filling out an outline. I don't know where the outline is.
Everyone's going to have it. You already actually have it.
Oh, okay.
I filled it out, but I'm not European. I just filled out to give some ideas, like little subtle things. Like, how many of you, if you've actually looked at it, will see Frank Sinatra on there as a civil right under the civil rights portion of European American? How many of you know why I put Frank there? How many of you know? Come on now. None of you know what Frank did as an Italian American? Think Sammy. Think Sammy.
I was to say, among other things, he was the first very popular entertainer to embrace Sammy Davis Jr.
Not only that, he desegregated Las Vegas.
Yes.
Because Frank, he didn't have to do that. But Frank said, if Sammy don't eat here, I don't eat here. Sammy don't sleep here, I don't sleep here. Sammy don't, if you want to perform, you give him the same accommodations you give me.
Yep.
And he didn't have to do that. But I will say this, how many of you knew that the Italians, just like the Irish, were only offered jobs because of what eugenics, that Nazi language that I've asked you to get away from, because of what eugenics said about them. They could only work in, Italian immigrants were only offered coal mines, garbage men. They couldn't have certain jobs because they were Italian. So many of them stopped speaking Italian and start changing their names to sound more white, right? So did Frank Sinatra remember that when they started treating Sammy that way? Probably. I also ask myself, did John F. Kennedy, because his dad was a criminal, which meant his dad had to have spent time, at least initially, because the first integrated neighborhoods were of squalors with Irish and black together, right? Because they saw the black Irish, so they put the Irish as the only group they were putting with black. So I always ask myself, when Kennedy said desegregate these schools, did he have Joe Kennedy in the back of his mind saying, hey, I grew up with those people, you don't do that. They did it to us, don't join the people. You know, they did it to us as Irish, and I happen to live amongst the people that they're trying to do it to now, don't do it. I don't know if that's for sure what happened with John F. Kennedy, but I can tell you this, African Americans to this day love John F. Kennedy. Still love him. They still love Frank Sinatra. Still, to this very day. Right? Bobby Kennedy was in Harlem when Martin Luther King was shot. He was in the safest place in the world he could have been. He was in Harlem. He was the one that announced in Harlem that Martin Luther King had been shot as Bobby Kennedy. But we love the Kennedys. But how much of that was because they knew their Irish history, which again, full circle, why we need to be teaching Euro-ethnic history as separate from white. Look at the things, even Frank and Kennedy, look what they did with that knowledge. That's what I want your grandkids and your great-grandkids to be able to do with their knowledge. So that was the last one, Bob. That was literally it. Fill it out. I challenge each and every one of you. You don't have to do the whole thing, especially you. No, you have to do the whole thing. You have to touch every category. Everybody else can get one or two. No, you got to do the whole thing. You got to touch every single space. All right, every box. You got to do the whole thing. I'm a teacher. I'm allowed to do that. You're like one of my you're my Excel student. So you get a little extra work, and if it's not your parents anymore, the wife approves. So that is your parent, and She approves of this extra assignment for you.
I haven't even seen what the assignment is, so I'll reserve judgment on that.
All right, so with that said, if there are any other questions, we can do that, or we can go over and eat. We can have a lightweight over there. I would like, if you would like to, before session 2, if you would like these things, so we could save paper. Hey, look at me, I'm going green, right? Right? Go over and just put your email address and then a semicolon space. And then walk away. When we're all done, what I will do is I will hit send. And when I hit send, you will have copies of all of these, plus a bonus, which none of you have seen yet. And that is, Bob, you haven't seen it yet either, and neither has Katie. And that is a letter from one of my students who wrote it to the principal, because my students have already adopted these principles in their classes of ethnic equality. So when we have ethnic problems, we have an ethnic roundtable, and that kid who didn't have a voice before is allowed to have that voice now, right? Or the female Euro-ethnic can come in and speak as a Euro-ethnic and not have to speak as a woman. She can speak as a Euro-ethnic who came out of, like I said, who stepped away. She's French. So she stepped away from the feet of the Statue of Liberty. Of course we're going to listen to her. She's been a freedom fighter for 200, 300 years. Why wouldn't we listen? So, that said, did it close down? All right, let me unlock the computer. I think we can.